So no matter how much Disney has tried to avoid any kind of backlash regarding Snow White, no matter how much they try to hide Rachel Zegler from interviews, no matter how much they try to do anything to quell the storm that is coming their way for this film, apparently it doesn't matter because now they got the dwarves after them. I'm not kidding, ladies and gentlemen. The dwarf actors plan to protest outside of Disney Studios over the exclusion of them in the Snow White film. And people are wondering, does Disney's commitment to inclusion end at little people? Now, obviously, you guys are aware Snow White is utilizing CGI dwarves in their film instead of hiring real dwarven people, real little people, whatever they like to be called. They're not hiring them because of what Peter Dinklage said about the depiction of Snow White and dwarves in caves and how that is a stereotype, because apparently he's not in the film. So that's really what it is. If he's in the film, then the stereotype is fine. But since he's not in the film, he had a problem with it. So because of Peter Dinklage's comments, Disney decided, you know what? Well, we can't depict real dwarven people in this film anymore because that would somehow be bad, I guess, for our overall inclusion. We do inclusion by exclusion, and that's what we're going to be practicing with this film. So let's get into this article, guys, from That Park Place. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. So again, guys, they're planning a protest outside of Disney Studios. As Disney's live-action Snow White prepares to hit theaters this weekend, one group is making it clear that they won't be quietly brushed aside. Dwarf actors are reportedly planning a protest outside of Disney Studios over Snow White, calling out the studio's decision to exclude them from the film and instead use CGI replacements for the 7 dwarves. Dwarf actress Ali Chapman didn't mince words, calling Disney's version of the film a total travesty. Now, again, I feel like people saw that they were going to use the DEI people, right? Like the DEI fake dwarves, even though they weren't dwarves. But remember when they were doing the 7 DEI cast members and then they decided to suddenly go with CGI dwarves and say that that was always the plan, even though nobody believes that because they delayed the movie for over a year to do reshoots and to do all of the CGI? Anyway, that's besides the point. The dwarven people, the dwarven actors have made it very clear that they are highly upset over this. Some people have even went after Peter Dinklage for his comments and blaming him, rightfully so, for the reason why Disney is deciding to do this. I find it hilarious that if this was a black role, right? If this was a role that required a black person to do or a white person to do that wasn't dwarven, you guarantee that they would have did everything possible to do inclusion in this film. But because it's about dwarven people, apparently they're not important enough to actually showcase, and then they can be replaced by CGI and nobody's supposed to bat an eye. It's insane that Disney, the company that claims to be about inclusion, equity, and diversity, apparently doesn't really apply to people who are, you know, height challenged, let's say. So her husband, also a dwarf actor, added, "We've been totally shut out, but we're not going to go down quietly. It's hard enough in Hollywood. Everyone's trying to make their dreams come true. When you're a little person, opportunities are few and far between. I was born to play dopey." The planned protest shines an even brighter spotlight on what has been brewing controversy for months. I would say more than months, over a year. From the start, critics have pointed out the absurdity of Disney, champions of so-called inclusion, deliberately sidelining dwarf actors in favor of full-size magical beings, and after backlash, resorting to CGI. Again, they did this whole like 7 magical beings of DEI, and then they eventually ended up, after this, the pictures leaked from the set, they eventually ended up delaying the movie for almost a year and then redoing it with CGI dwarves. But then they claimed that CGI dwarves were always the start. It was always going to be the case. The protest organizer summed it up perfectly. If Hollywood is about inclusion and diversity, then you could have had talented little people actors in all of these roles. He added, "This is a moment in history. Equality is a movement. But when it comes to little people, no one in Hollywood is listening." And again, they easily could have done 7 real dwarven people and given them 7 real jobs and 7 real opportunities to get their resumes looking better, you know, get their filmographies looking better. But instead of that, they went with CGI. And the hilarious thing is you can't even claim that it would have been cheaper to go with CGI because in all honesty, I feel like the CGI was more expensive, right? You could have gotten 7 dwarven actors, right? And I highly doubt that the amount of money that would have cost to hire all 7 of them would have been the same to hire the hundreds of people that you probably have working in the CGI department to do it top speed to try to get it out within a year. I highly doubt it would have been as much. Maybe it would have been close, but I don't believe that. I feel like CGI, considering the rush project that they did on it, was more expensive, especially considering the detail on those CGI projects and those CGI models. If you look at it, That's not cheap. I guarantee you they spent crazy money on that. So this controversy traces back to Peter Dinklage, the one and only who kicked the stool out from every other Dwarven person who criticized the remake's initial plans for including dwarves, calling the story backwards. Disney ever reacted, responded by scrapping the 7 dwarves altogether and introducing a lineup of non-dwarf, multiracial, diverse, magical beings instead. The backlash was swift, both from fans and dwarf actors themselves. Rather than course correct and hire dwarf actors who could have used the exposure and opportunity, Disney opted for CGI versions of the dwarves, effectively shutting real actors out of the process altogether. Now, again, Disney has had a double standard for inclusion, obviously. It only usually ever goes one way, and that's normally black. If they have an opportunity to make something black or gay, they will. That's where they tend to focus. Everything else that is supposed to be marginalized, they don't really care. Latinos don't really care. Dwarven people don't really care. They don't care unless it's black or gay. What makes this even more egregious is how it contrasts with Disney's public messaging. For a company that loudly touts its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, their actions here tell a different story. Dwarf actors, an actual marginalized community, have been excluded from a $300 million live-action project that should have provided real, meaningful roles. And I agree with that. They should have given them the opportunity. They should have had the chance to be able to do the job and do the job well and increase their filmographies that are already hard for them to increase as it is, because like they said, they don't really get a lot of roles to begin with. So the actual article that this is based on is from Breitbart, and it says that dwarf actors plan to protest Snow White for not hiring dwarf to play dwarves. This is a pretty big deal for them, and I think at this point, this is going to be even more bad news for Disney, where it's like, where do you draw the line, right? Disney needs to figure out, where do they honestly draw the line when it comes to inclusion of everybody? So, because supposedly they want to include everybody. It says in Hollywood culture that supposedly embraced DEI as though it would save them from the drowning. How do you exclude dwarves when everything is supposed to be about feeling seen and inclusion? I would think that's a great fucking question. Why would you exclude dwarves when this is supposed to be about giving everybody the opportunity to feel seen, to feel represented, right? Or how are dwarven people supposed to see themselves in this movie? It's a great question, right? People, they always try to bring up the fact that, oh, black people need to see themselves in all these films that we are race swapping. We need to represent the world that we live in today. That's the excuse that they say. So if that's the case, why didn't you give dwarven people the opportunity to see themselves on screen in a live action remake? It's not like this is a CGI movie. It's not like this is a cartoon. It's a live action remake. So why didn't you give them the opportunity to see themselves in this film? What is the issue? What is the problem? I don't understand. Then again, the organizer of the protest told the Standard, if Hollywood is about inclusion and diversity, then you could have had talented little people actors in all of these roles. This is a moment in history. Quality is a movement. But when it comes to little people, no one in Hollywood is listening. And to be honest with you, this is not the first time we've heard of this. Unfortunately, dwarven people have had issues in Hollywood for a long time. They're usually just hired for comedic roles. They're not really hired in anything super serious. That's just the overall truth of it, because they view that most people won't take a dwarven actor serious in a lead role unless it has something to do with, I guess, being a dwarven person in general. So this is a big problem, and it's very clear that Disney wanted or thought that they can sidestep this by having CGI dwarves. They thought they can avoid all controversy by having CGI dwarves, but in all actuality, by doing CGI dwarves, they ended up just stepping in more controversy, because every time you try to avoid it, like Disney, you're just going to end up in more shit to step in. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.